So you play Black Myth, Wukong. 40 hours, 100 bosses, that whole gorgeous, brutal, deeply messed up world where heaven's rotten, the gods are the bad guys, and Wukong got betrayed and broken into pieces. And somewhere in there you probably thought, man, game science went dark with this. Took an old kid's myth about a magic monkey and cranked it grimdark. Yeah, here's the thing. They didn't make most of that up. That corrupt heaven, the betrayal, the idea that the system just couldn't stand to let Wukong stay free. People in China have been arguing about exactly that for 500 years. There's a whole underground reading of the original book, and game science didn't just know about it. They built the entire game on top of it. Specifically, they took 3 things straight out of those theories. The betrayal that starts the game, the bosses you fight, and the 6 pieces of Wukong's soul you spend 40 hours collecting. 3 borrowed secrets, and exactly 1 thing they changed. And it's the change that tells you what this game really is. Count them with me. Okay, so most people outside China have roughly the same idea of what this game is. Chinese Dark Souls. Gorgeous, punishing, and based on some ancient Monkey King legend. The way God of War is based on Greek myth. A jumping-off point. Devs grab a character, invent a cool dark story, run with it. And underneath that is one big assumption, that the original Journey to the West is the light version, the wholesome one. The 16th century adventure they teach kids, where a monk and his magic bodyguards learn about teamwork on the road to India. So obviously the game had to add all the darkness itself. Yeah, that's almost exactly backwards. The book is already dark. Game science's real trick wasn't inventing anything. It was reading the parts everybody skips. Let's start with the setup, because this is where it gets good. In the game, here's the deal. Wukong finishes the famous journey, gets made into a Buddha, and then he quits. Walks away from heaven, goes home to his mountain, and just wants to live. And heaven cannot handle that. A god that powerful, that popular, that impossible to control, off the leash? No chance. So they send Erlang and an army to drag him back in. They clamp that golden headband on him again, the one that drops him with blinding pain on command, and use it to break him. He gets shattered, his soul split into 6 pieces, scattered across the world. And you play some random monkey trying to put him back together. Now, how much of that is actually in the book? The quitting, the ambush, the getting shattered? Not in there. The book ends happy. Wukong finishes the journey, gets promoted to victorious fighting Buddha. Everybody gets a title and a cloud to sit on. On paper, total win. So the game made up the betrayal. Except, and this is the whole point, it didn't make up the idea. Because for as long as people have read this book closely, they've been saying the exact thing the game says. There's no way. No way a heaven like that. This paranoid, hierarchy-obsessed, control-freak bureaucracy actually lets a guy like Wukong walk off free and happy. Somebody who tore the place apart and bows to no one. They'd never allow it. It is the single most popular theory about the book. And game science looked at it and went, yeah, that's the real ending. And they built a masterpiece on top of a fan theory. So that's the first theft. The game's entire setup is a fan theory wearing a AAA budget. But a premise is just a skeleton. The real question is who you spend those 40 hours actually fighting. Because the monster roster? They didn't invent that either. Almost every major boss in Black Myth is lifted straight out of a specific chapter of the novel. That black bear you fight first? Real. He stole a magic robe in the book. The yellow wind guy? Real. And the game does something quietly vicious with him. Watch what he's fighting with. It's a severed head. And that head belonged to a bodhisattva named Lingji. Here's the gut punch, if you know the book. In the original, Lingji is the holy figure who shows up and subdues the yellow wind demon. He's the good guy of that whole chapter. So the game takes the divine authority who beat this monster and turns his head into the monster's war trophy. One prop, no dialogue, and it tells you everything. In this world, heaven already lost. But the one I really want you to look at is the boss at the end of Chapter 3. The fake Buddha, Yellowbrow. In the game, he's running this whole fraudulent temple, the new Thunderclap, cosplaying as the real Buddha and working a con on you. That's real too. And in the book, it's so much nastier than the game even spells out. In the novel, this guy is a servant. a little attendant who polishes the symbols for the Buddha Maitreya. He steals his master's magic gear, sneaks down to Earth, builds a knockoff temple, and impersonates the Buddha himself, well enough to make the whole pilgrimage party kneel to a fraud. And when he finally gets caught, nothing happens to him. No punishment at all. His boss just shows up, quietly collects his stolen toys, and walks the kid home. Because he's connected. Because he works for somebody important. Hang on to that. Connected demons get a pass. It's the rule the entire book secretly runs on. And if you want the one that actually hurts, go to Chapter 5 of the game. The Flaming Mountains. The big villains there are the Bull Demon King and his family. And that family is a tragedy heaven manufactured. Back in the book, there's a kid, Red Boy, a fire-breathing demon child who nearly kills the entire pilgrimage. And when he's finally beaten, the goddess Guanyin doesn't destroy him. She recruits him, takes him away to serve as her personal attendant. On paper, it's a huge promotion, immortality, a spot in heaven. To his parents, it was a kidnapping. They never forgive it. And years later, when the heroes come asking the boy's mother for a simple favor, she tries to burn them alive out of pure, cold revenge. The game's entire 5th chapter is built on that grief. A family broken apart by heaven doing them a favor. You spend hours fighting the wreckage of it. These bosses aren't monster of the week filler. Every single one is a door back into the actual text. So the cast is real. 2 for 2. But okay, surely the weird part is original. The soul collecting? The 6 glowing relics? No book has that in it, right? That's number 3, and it's the one that made me put the controller down. The whole quest, the entire spine of Black Myth, is you collecting 6 relics to rebuild Wukong. 6 pieces of his soul. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. And the 6th piece, the mind, turns out to be you. The little monkey you've been playing this whole time. If you don't catch the reference, that sounds like cool fantasy flavor. It isn't. Those are the 6 senses. In Buddhism, they've got a name for it. The 6 roots. The 6 faculties a person takes in the whole world through. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. That's real doctrine, and the game is quietly built on it. And it goes one layer deeper, because look at what the relics are actually called. Not just eyes. Craving eyes. Not just ears. Fuming ears. Hubris nose. Every one of them is named after a sin. Greed. Anger. Pride. So those 6 pieces aren't just Wukong's senses. They're his flaws, the exact vices that dragged him into every disaster he ever caused. Which means when you spend the whole game hunting them down and taking them back, one at a time, you're not just rebuilding a monkey. You're a soul walking back through its own worst impulses, facing each one to become whole again. And that is the entire point of the original journey, smuggled into a boss rush. Because the deepest, oldest reading of Journey to the West, actual literature professors, not internet stuff, is that Sun Wukong was never really a monkey. He's a metaphor for the human mind. His nickname all through the book is literally the mind monkey. Restless, wild, impossible to pin down. That's you. That's your own thoughts. And the whole journey is about taming that scattered mind into something enlightened. Game Science didn't just read the adventure story. They read the philosophy buried under it and turned it into your objective marker. That's not lazy. That's flexing. 3 for 3. The betrayal, the bosses, the soul. All of it lifted from 500 years of people reading this book too closely. Which makes the last question the only one that matters. If they took everything, what did they change? One thing, and it changes everything. In the game, heaven is evil. Flat out. The gods are tyrants. The celestial court is a dictatorship, and you're fighting to get free of it. Clean villain, no notes. In the book, heaven is not evil. And this is the part that matters. In the actual novel, heaven is corrupt. It takes bribes, plays favorites, covers for its own, runs like a lazy self-dealing office. But it is not evil. It's satire. Wu Qingyin wasn't writing monstrous gods. He was writing a comedy about a divine civil service that behaves exactly like the crooked human one he was stuck living under. There's a scene at the very end of the book where the Buddha's own staff shake the heroes down for a bribe, and the Buddha takes their side. And it plays almost for laughs. Cynical? Deeply. Evil? No. So here's what Game Science really did. They took the book's ambiguity and they killed it. The book asks a question and then flat out refuses to answer it. Is this system rotten to the core, or is it just human? Flawed, self-interested, whatever any big institution eventually turns into. Wu Cheng'in shrugs and lets it hang there. The game does not shrug. The game picks a side. Rotten. Evil. Burn it down. And then it hands the argument to you. Because the whole thing comes down to that golden headband. The leash. The exact control device Heaven used to break Wukong in the first place. And at the very end, the game gives you a choice with it. You can let them lock it back onto your new monkey, become the next great sage on a leash, and kick the entire cycle off all over again. Or you can refuse it and walk away free. The one single thing Wukong himself was never allowed to do. That's not a boss reward. That's the game asking you. Point blank. The question the book has been asking for 500 years. Can anybody actually stay free of the system? Or does it always, in the end, get the collar back on? And that's the full ledger. 3 things borrowed, 1 thing changed. Add it up, and Black Myth isn't a retelling of Journey to the West at all. It's a fight with it. Game science grabbed the darkest thing you could possibly believe about that world, that Heaven's rotten, that it broke its own greatest hero on purpose, out of fear, and instead of just believing it, they spent 7 years building a masterpiece to make 40 million people feel it. And here's what gets me. They might be right, or they might be missing the whole point. Because the actual book never says Heaven is evil. It says something weirder and honestly scarier. That Heaven is exactly like us. Petty, corrupt, covering for its friends. Not monsters. Just people with too much power and nobody watching. The game hands you a villain you can hit. The book hands you a mirror and walks away. Which one's the truth? That's not the game's call. That's the book's. And that's what we do here. Put the game down and actually open the thing it's arguing with. Legends Annotated.